The first time my husband said the words out loud, I thought he was joking. The second time, I realized my life had already cracked. I just hadn't heard the sound yet. He didn't shout. He didn't slam the door. He stood at the foot of our bed, arms folded tight across his chest, eyes fixed on a spot just above my head, and said very calmly, "That baby isn't mine." The room smelled like warm milk and baby powder. Our son, 3 weeks old, still learning how to breathe without startling himself, slept in his bassinet beside the bed. His tiny chest rose and fell, soft as a tide. I had just finished nursing him. My body still ached in places I didn't know could ache. I remember blinking at my husband, waiting for the rest of the sentence, waiting for the smile, the apology, the laugh that would tell me this was stress talking or exhaustion or fear. Nothing came. The clock on the dresser ticked louder than it ever had before. "What?" I asked. He swallowed, finally looked at me, and his eyes were cold in a way I'd never seen. Not angry, not sad, just distant, like he'd already stepped away from me and was calling back from another room. "I've done the math," he said. "The timing doesn't add up." That was the moment something inside me went quiet. Not shattered, not exploded, just muted, like a sound being turned down so low it almost disappears. I pulled the blanket tighter around myself, suddenly aware of my bare shoulders, the stretch marks on my stomach, the way my body no longer felt like it belonged to me. "What math?" I asked. He exhaled through his nose. "I don't want to fight. I just want the truth." The truth. As if I hadn't been living inside it for months. Morning sickness, swollen ankles, hospital visits, the long night of labor where I gripped his hand until my fingers went numb. I looked at our baby. His lips twitched in his sleep. "You think I cheated on you?" I said quietly. He didn't answer. That was answer enough. Before that night, our life wasn't perfect, but it was steady. We had been married for 6 years, together for 9, the kind of relationship built more on routine than fireworks, but I had always believed that was what lasted. We argued about dishes and money and whether the TV was too loud. We kissed goodbye in the mornings. He brought home takeout on Fridays. I folded his socks the way he liked, rolled into neat pairs. When I found out I was pregnant, he sat on the edge of the bathtub while I waved the test in shaking hands. He smiled, slow and stunned, and said, "Wow," just that one word. Then he hugged me so tightly I couldn't breathe. His mother cried when we told her. She pressed her hand to her chest and said, "A grandbaby," like it was a prayer she'd been saying quietly for years. She was always present, not cruel, not controlling in obvious ways, just always there, calling, stopping by, offering advice wrapped in sweetness. "Eat more iron," she'd say. "Don't lift that," she'd warn. "You're carrying low," she'd observe, her eyes lingering on my stomach like it was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. During my pregnancy, she started coming over more often, folding baby clothes that I hadn't asked her to fold, rearranging the nursery shelves, standing a little too close when I was tired. I told myself she was just excited. My husband worked long hours then, said he needed to save more now that we were becoming parents. I believed him. I wanted to. The night our son was born, his mother was in the waiting room before we even told her I was in labor. She held the baby before I had fully recovered from the anesthesia. She cried again, louder this time, and whispered something in his ear I couldn't hear. At the time, I thought nothing of it. After we brought the baby home, the air in our house shifted. Not dramatically, not enough that I could point to it and say, "This is wrong," but enough that I felt like I was walking carefully, listening for cracks in the floor. My husband stopped touching me the way he used to, not just sexually, even casually. No hand on my back as he passed, no kiss on my temple when he reached for his keys. He held the baby, yes, but awkwardly, like he was afraid of doing it wrong. At night, he lay stiff beside me, scrolling on his phone long after I turned off the lamp. I told myself he was tired. Men struggled after babies too, people said. Postpartum wasn't just for women. Then came the questions. How far along were you when you found out? Are you sure about the date? Did the doctor say the baby was full term? They came softly at first, like curiosity, like concern. I answered them all, patiently, honestly. Still, something darkened behind his eyes. The day he said the words, "That baby isn't mine," his mother had been over that afternoon. She'd sat at the kitchen table, hands folded around a mug of tea she barely touched. She watched me move around the kitchen, adjusting the baby in my arms, humming under my breath. "You look tired," she said. "I am," I smiled. She hesitated, then asked, "You're sure about everything?" I didn't understand what she meant then. I thought she was talking about motherhood, about marriage, about whether I was coping. "Yes," I said, "I'm sure." She nodded slowly, like she'd just confirmed something for herself. That night, my husband stood at the foot of our bed and accused me of destroying our family with a lie. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand proof. Instead, I felt myself shrink inward. "I've never been with anyone else." My voice sounded far away to my own ears. "Not once." He looked at me for a long moment, then he shook his head. "I need space," he said. He slept on the couch that night. I lay awake listening to the house settle, the refrigerator hum, the faint creak of the couch springs as he shifted his weight. And beside me, our baby slept, unaware that his very existence had become a question mark. I stared at the ceiling and wondered how the truth could feel so fragile when I had been holding it in my arms all along. The morning after my husband moved to the couch, the house felt unfamiliar, like a place I'd rented once and forgotten how to live in. I woke before the baby cried. My body had learned that rhythm already, some quiet animal instinct. The sky outside the bedroom window was pale, undecided. I lay there, listening, hoping, stupidly, that my husband would come back into the room, that I'd hear the soft click of the door and feel the dip of the mattress. Instead, there was only silence. When I finally got up, my feet were cold against the tile. I padded into the living room, the baby tucked against my chest, his head warm and heavy beneath my chin. My husband sat on the couch in yesterday's clothes, elbows on his knees, staring at his phone. He looked up when he saw me. His eyes flicked to the baby, then away. "Morning," I said. "Morning," he replied. His voice was flat. I waited. For something. Anything. Nothing came. I moved into the kitchen and set the kettle on. The sound of it filling felt too loud. Every small noise seemed amplified now, the click of the stove, the hum of the refrigerator, the baby's tiny sighs. When I turned back, my husband was standing in the doorway. "I called my mom," he said. The kettle whistled before I could respond. I turned it off slowly, buying myself a second to breathe. "Why?" I asked. He shrugged. I needed advice. Advice on whether his wife had betrayed him, on whether the child sleeping against my heart belonged in this house. "She thinks we should get a DNA test," he added, as if he were suggesting we try a new brand of coffee. The word DNA landed between us like something sharp. "A test?" I repeated. "You want a test? If you're telling the truth, then you shouldn't have a problem with it." I looked at him then, really looked, at the faint line between his eyebrows, the way his jaw tightened when he felt challenged. This was the man who had held my leg during labor, who had cried when our son first screamed his way into the world. And yet, standing there, he felt like a stranger. "I just had a baby," I said quietly. My body is still healing. I'm barely sleeping, and you think now is the time to accuse me? I didn't accuse you, he snapped. I said I have questions. I laughed then, a short, bitter sound that surprised both of us. That's an accusation, I said. You don't ask those questions unless you already think I'm guilty. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The baby stirred, fussing softly. I rocked him instinctively, my hand moving in slow circles along his back. I won't do it, I said. My husband stiffened. What? I won't do a DNA test, I repeated. Not like this. Not because you and your mother decided I'm a liar. His eyes darkened. So you're refusing? I'm protecting myself, I said. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded once. Fine, then I'll stay at my mom's for a while. The kettle, still warm, sat untouched on the stove. He left an hour later, packed a bag, didn't kiss the baby goodbye. The door closed with a sound that echoed far longer than it should have. His mother came over that afternoon. She didn't call first. I heard her car pull into the driveway just as I was changing the baby. My hands froze mid-motion when I saw her through the window, stepping out with that familiar, purposeful stride. I considered not answering, pretending I was asleep or in the shower or gone. But the knock came anyway, soft, polite, persistent. I opened the door with the baby on my hip. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, her face rearranging itself into concern. "You look exhausted." I stepped aside to let her in. The house smelled faintly of milk and clean laundry. She glanced around like she was taking inventory. "I heard what happened," she said, settling herself on the couch. "My son is very upset." I didn't respond. I focused on fastening the baby's onesie, my fingers trembling just slightly. "He's confused and hurt," she continued. I looked up at her then. "And what about me?" I asked. She paused just for a second, a crack in the smooth surface. "Well," she said carefully, "this wouldn't be happening if there weren't questions." "There are no questions, only accusations." She sighed, folding her hands in her lap. "You have to understand how it looks, the timing, the distance between you two lately." "The distance?" I echoed. "I was pregnant, I was sick, I was exhausted." She nodded sympathetically, but her eyes were sharp. "Sometimes women make mistakes when they feel lonely." The words slid into me like ice. "I didn't," I said. She reached out and touched the baby's cheek. He slept through it, oblivious. "He's beautiful," she said softly, "truly." Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. "You know," she continued, "I've seen this before." "Seen what?" I asked. "Families torn apart because someone couldn't tell the truth." My hands clenched into fists. "Are you saying I'm lying?" I demanded. She looked at me for a long moment, then leaned back. "I am saying that the truth always comes out." After she left, the house felt colder. I locked the door behind her and slid down against it, the baby cradled against my chest. My breath came in short, shallow bursts. I replayed every moment of my pregnancy in my mind, every appointment, every night my husband was away late, every conversation with his mother. Had she planted this seed, or had my husband already been carrying it? That night, alone in our bed, I stared at the empty space beside me and wondered when exactly my marriage had started slipping through my fingers. Days turned into weeks. My husband stayed with his mother. He came by occasionally to see the baby, but it felt like a performance. He held him stiffly, avoided my eyes, left after 15 minutes with an excuse about work. We spoke only about logistics. His mother called every few days. Always gentle, always concerned. "Have you thought more about the test?" she'd ask. "No," I'd answer. She never pushed outright. She didn't need to. The doubt did her work for her. I started to notice things I hadn't before. The way she asked about my past casually, slipping questions into conversation. The way she mentioned my husband's old girlfriend from years ago. The way she watched me when I answered, her head tilted slightly, like she was weighing my words. One afternoon, as I rocked the baby in the quiet living room, my phone buzzed with a message from my husband. "We need to talk." My chest tightened. He came over that evening, his mother in tow. "We thought it would be best," he said, not meeting my eyes. She sat across from me, hands folded neatly, expression calm. "This isn't an interrogation. We just want clarity." Clarity. They asked questions about dates, about nights I barely remembered because I'd been sick or asleep, about conversations I'd forgotten because they hadn't mattered then. I answered everything. Still, it wasn't enough. My husband rubbed his face, frustration etched into every line. "I just can't shake this feeling," he said. "Something isn't right." I looked at him then, really looked. "This feeling," I said slowly, "did it start with you, or did someone put it there?" His mother inhaled sharply. "That's unfair," she said. "Is it?" I asked. The room fell silent. My husband shifted uncomfortably. "My mom just wants what's best," he said. "For who? Because it doesn't feel like it's for me, and it doesn't feel like it's for our son." She stood then, smoothing her sweater. "This conversation isn't productive. I think you need rest." They left together. That night, I didn't cry. I lay awake, staring into the dark, listening to my baby's breathing. And for the first time, a thought crept into my mind, quiet, unwelcome, persistent. What if the truth they were looking for wasn't about me at all? Once the idea took root, it refused to leave me alone. At first, I tried to push it away. I told myself I was reaching for explanations because I was hurt, because I was being cornered, because it felt easier to imagine some hidden story than to accept that the man I loved truly believed I could betray him so easily. But doubt has a way of sharpening your senses. I began noticing the pauses in his mother's speech, those tiny hesitations before she answered certain questions, the way she corrected my husband when he talked about dates from his own childhood, the way she always positioned herself as the quiet authority, the keeper of family truths. I remembered how she'd reacted when we announced the pregnancy, the tears, the hand on her chest. At the time, it felt like joy. Now, in memory, it looked like shock. One afternoon, as I folded laundry in the living room, the baby asleep in his swing, my phone rang. It was my husband's mother. "I was thinking," she said, without preamble, "maybe we could talk, just the two of us." My stomach tightened. "About what?" "About clearing the air," she replied. "I don't want there to be resentment." Resentment. That word again, always framing herself as the peacemaker. "Fine," I said. "Come over." She arrived with a casserole dish, like a peace offering. The smell of baked cheese and tomatoes filled the kitchen. We sat at the table. The baby slept in the next room. She folded her napkin carefully before speaking. "You know," she said, "when my son was young, things weren't easy." I waited. "His father and I had difficulties," she continued. "There were periods of separation." I nodded, unsure where this was going. "He was away for work often," she said, "weeks at a time." Something in her tone made my skin prickle. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "I just think context matters." She stirred her tea, watching the spoon circle slowly. "There are things," she said, "that children don't always need to know." I felt my heart beat in my throat. "What kind of things?" I asked. She looked up at me then, and for the first time, her eyes didn't look kind. "Adult things," she said. The baby cried then, a sharp, sudden sound that made me jump. I stood, grateful for the excuse to leave the room. When I came back, she was standing by the window, staring out at the yard. "Have you ever loved someone you shouldn't?" she asked quietly. I froze. "No. Have you?" She turned slowly, her face composed. "Love isn't always simple, and sometimes the consequences echo longer than you expect." The words hung between us, heavy and unfinished. After she left, I couldn't shake the feeling that she'd been circling something, not confessing, but testing the edges of a truth. That night, after the baby fell asleep, I pulled out the old photo albums. They were stored in a box at the back of the closet, pictures from before my husband and I met, his childhood, family holidays. I flipped through them slowly, studying faces I'd seen 100 times. There was something I hadn't noticed before. In several photos from the same year, my husband around 4 or 5, there was another man. Not his father, a friend maybe, a coworker. The man stood close to his mother in every picture, a hand on her shoulder, a familiarity that felt intimate. I felt ridiculous for even thinking it, but the seed had been planted. I found my husband's birth certificate tucked into a file folder with our marriage documents. I'd seen it before. I hadn't studied it. This time, I did. Father, listed. Date, fine. Everything normal. And yet, I felt like I was looking at a door that had been painted over, nothing visibly wrong, but something solid hidden underneath. A week later, my husband came over alone. He looked tired, thinner, older. "He's not trying to hurt you," he said as soon as he sat down. "I just need to know." "Know what?" I asked. "Whether he's mine." I took a breath. "What if I told you that the truth you're searching for has nothing to do with me?" He frowned. "What does that mean?" "I think I can see it whispering in the edges of your voice," I said, choosing my words carefully. "You're seeing what you want to see." His jaw tightened. "My mom?" he scoffed. "She'd never lie to me." I held his gaze. "Would she?" I asked again. "Or would she lie to protect herself?" He stood abruptly. "That's out of line." "Is it?" I asked again. He ran a hand through his hair. "She's been honest with me my whole life. She's always been there." I nodded. "So was I said. He didn't respond. Before he left, he paused at the door. "If you have something to say it." "I don't. Not yet." The turning point came on an ordinary Tuesday. The baby and I were at the pediatrician's office for a routine checkup. The nurse asked for family medical history. I answered what I could, repeating what I'd been told. "Any genetic conditions on the father's side?" she asked. I hesitated. "I'm not sure," I said. She smiled sympathetically. "You'd be surprised how often that happens." The doctor entered then, flipping through the chart. "Blood types?" he asked casually. I gave mine. He nodded. "And the father?" "AB," I said automatically. He looked up. "AB," he repeated. "Interesting." My heart skipped. "What?" I asked. "Well," he said lightly, "with your blood type, that combination can produce certain types, but not others." I felt dizzy. "What does that mean?" I asked. He waved it off. "Nothing to worry about, just genetics. We'll keep an eye on it." But I was already spiraling. That evening, I sat at my computer, reading everything I could about blood types and inheritance, charts, forums, medical articles. And slowly, painfully, a possibility took shape, one that made my hands shake, one that didn't accuse me, but raised questions about my husband. I closed the laptop and stared into the dark. If this was true, then the lie had started long before me. And if I was right, then the truth my husband needed would shatter more than just our marriage. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, numbers and charts floated behind my eyelids, little boxes labeled A, B, O, pluses and minuses I had never cared about before. I kept hearing the doctor's voice. Interesting. Such a small word, but it had cracked something open. By morning, I was exhausted and wired all at once, like my body had forgotten how to rest. I waited until the baby fell asleep, then called my husband. "We need to talk," I said. There was a pause on the line. "About the test?" he asked. "About the truth," I replied. He agreed to come over that evening. All day I moved through the house in a fog. I folded laundry I'd already folded. I reheated the same cup of tea 3 times without drinking it. I stared at my son's face, searching for answers in the curve of his nose, the shape of his eyes. He's innocent, I kept thinking. No matter what came next, he was innocent. When my husband arrived, he looked guarded, like he was bracing for impact. "What is this about?" he asked, standing instead of sitting. "I went to the pediatrician today," I said. He stiffened. "They asked about family medical history and blood types." His eyes flickered, just for a second. "And," he said, "and some things don't add up," I replied. He crossed his arms. "This feels like deflection." "It's not," I said. "Just listen." I explained what the doctor had said, the blood types, the genetic impossibility I'd discovered late last night, sitting alone in the dark. As I spoke, his face changed, confusion first, then irritation, then something else. Fear, maybe. "That doesn't mean anything," he said quickly. "Doctors say things all the time." "I looked it up," I said, "extensively." "So now you're an expert?" he snapped. "No," I said calmly, "but I know enough to ask questions." He shook his head, pacing. "This is ridiculous," he said. "You're trying to turn this around on me." "I'm not turning anything around," I said. "I'm following where the facts lead." He stopped pacing and stared at me. "What are you implying?" he asked. I met his eyes. "I think," I said slowly, "that you might not be your father's biological son." The words landed hard. His laugh was sharp and humorless. "That's insane." "Is it?" I asked. "Yes," he snapped. "My mother would never lie about that." I swallowed. "Wouldn't she?" I asked softly. Silence stretched between us. "You need help," he said finally. "You're exhausted. You're imagining things." "Then let's check," I said. "Let's do a test." His eyes narrowed. "A DNA test?" "Yes," I said, "but not for the baby." He stared at me like I'd struck him. "That's not happening," he said. "Why?" I asked. "Because it's invasive and pointless." "And accusing me wasn't?" I asked. He didn't answer. "I'll do the baby's test on one condition." He hesitated. "What condition?" "That you test too, against your father." His jaw clenched. "That's different," he said. "Why?" I pressed. "If you have nothing to hide." The room felt smaller, tighter. "I won't do it," he said. "Then neither will I replied. He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out without another word. The next call came from his mother. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "What are you trying to do?" she demanded. "I'm trying to tell the truth," I said. "You're poisoning my son against his family," she snapped. "Your son accused me of cheating 3 weeks after I gave birth. If anyone poisoned anything, it wasn't me." There was a sharp inhale on the other end of the line. "You need to stop this, now," she said. "Stop what?" I asked. "Digging. Some things are buried for a reason." The words sent a chill through me. "Why are you afraid?" I asked quietly. She was silent. "I think you owe your son the truth," I said. She laughed then, a brittle sound. "You have no idea what you're talking about, and if you keep pushing, you'll destroy him." The line went dead. 2 days later, she showed up at my door. She looked different,
smaller, tired. "I need to speak with you," she said. I stepped aside. She didn't sit right away. She paced the living room, wringing her hands. "You've gone too far," she said. "This isn't your place." "It became my place when you let your son believe I was unfaithful," I replied. She stopped pacing. "You don't understand what you're asking for," she said. "Then explain it to me," I said. She sank onto the couch slowly, like her legs had finally given out. "When I was young, I was very lonely." I said nothing. "My husband was away constantly, months at a time." Her voice trembled, just slightly. "There was someone else, a friend, someone who listened." My heart pounded. "I didn't plan for it to happen," she whispered. "It just did." I held my breath. "When I got pregnant, I wasn't sure." The room felt like it was tilting. "My husband believed the child was his," she said, "and I let him." "Your son," I said, my voice barely audible. She nodded. "I never told anyone," she said. "I thought I was protecting everyone." "Until now," I said. She looked up at me, eyes glossy. "When you had your baby and I saw him, I panicked." "Why?" I asked. "Because I knew," she said. "I knew if blood was tested, if questions were asked." Her voice broke. "So you let your son accuse me?" "I didn't think it would go this far," she sobbed. "I thought you'd agree to the test and it would end there." "And if it didn't?" I asked. She didn't answer. I stood slowly. "You destroyed my marriage to protect a lie." She wept then, full-bodied sobs. "I was afraid," she said. "I didn't want to lose my son." "You're losing him anyway," I said. She looked up, horror dawning. "You're going to tell him," she said. "Yes," I replied. She grabbed my arm. "Please," she begged. "He'll hate me." I gently removed her hand. "He deserves the truth, just like I did." Telling my husband was the hardest thing I've ever done. He sat across from me, listening in silence as I explained everything, the affair, the lie, the reason his mother had planted doubt in his mind. His face drained of color. When I finished, he stared at the floor. "I need to hear it from her," he said. We went to her house together. She didn't deny it this time. She told him everything. I watched my husband crumble in front of me, the man who accused me, doubted me, turned away when I needed him most. His world collapsed in on itself. When he finally looked at me, his eyes were red and hollow. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. I nodded. "I know," I said. But knowing didn't erase the damage. After the truth came out, nothing snapped back into place the way people like to imagine it does. There was no rush of relief, no cinematic moment where everything suddenly made sense and felt right again. Instead, there was a long, aching quiet, the kind that settles after something has been shattered beyond repair. My husband didn't come home with me that night. He stayed at his mother's house, not because he wanted to comfort her, but because he didn't know where else to go. He told me later that sleeping in his childhood bedroom felt like being trapped inside a memory that no longer belonged to him. For days, he barely spoke. When he did, his voice sounded distant, like he was speaking from underwater. He called once to ask how the baby was doing. "Fine," I said. "He's eating more." "That's good," he murmured. There was so much more he could have asked, so much he should have asked, but didn't. Meanwhile, his mother stopped calling altogether. No apologies, no explanations beyond what she'd already confessed, just silence. And somehow that silence felt heavier than all her words combined. I moved through my days in a haze, caring for the baby on autopilot, Feedings, diaper changes, walks around the block with the stroller, the rhythm of my steps, the only thing keeping my thoughts from spiraling. People talk about betrayal like it's a single moment, a discovery, a confession, but it isn't. It's a slow unraveling. It's realizing that the foundation you built your life on was cracked long before you ever stepped onto it. I thought about every interaction I'd ever had with his mother, every smile, every comment, every subtle suggestion, and I wondered how long she'd been preparing for this moment, not consciously, perhaps, but defensively, protecting herself at all costs, including mine, including her own son's. One afternoon, my husband came over unexpectedly. I was rocking the baby in the living room when I heard the door open. I didn't jump this time. I just looked up. He stood there, eyes rimmed with red, shoulders slumped. "I don't know who I am," he said. I didn't respond right away. He walked closer, knelt beside me, and looked at our son. "He looks like me," he said softly. I nodded. "He always has." He swallowed hard. "I destroyed everything," he whispered. I studied his face, the guilt etched into every line, the fear beneath it. "You didn't destroy everything," I said. "You broke my trust." He flinched. "I know, and I don't expect forgiveness." We sat there in silence for a while. The baby reached out, grabbing at his father's finger with surprising strength. My husband let out a shaky breath. "She told me she did it to protect me, to keep my life from falling apart." "And how do you feel now?" I asked. He laughed bitterly, like my life fell apart anyway. He looked at me then. "I should have believed you," he said, "from the start." "Yes," I replied. The honesty hurt, but it felt necessary. "I was scared," he said, "and she knew exactly how to push that fear." I nodded. "She knew where you were vulnerable." We didn't talk about reconciliation, not then, not yet. Some wounds needed air before they could even begin to heal. The consequences came quietly. My husband confronted his mother alone the next day. He told me later what she said, how she begged him not to cut him off completely, how she insisted she'd done what any mother would do. "What any mother would do," he repeated to me, shaking his head, "by letting me accuse my wife?" He moved out of her house that night, found a short-term rental nearby. The physical distance felt symbolic, necessary. For the first time since the baby was born, I felt like I could breathe. But breathing didn't mean the pain was gone. It just meant I wasn't drowning anymore. Weeks passed. We began therapy, individually at first, then together. The therapist asked questions that made us uncomfortable, about trust, about influence, about boundaries, about whether we truly saw each other as partners or as extensions of other people's expectations. Some sessions ended in silence, others in tears. My husband learned something difficult, that his mother's voice had always been louder in his head than he'd realized. I learned something too, that being strong didn't mean swallowing pain quietly. It meant naming it, even when it shook the ground beneath you. His mother sent a letter. I didn't open it. I wasn't ready. One evening, after a long therapy session, my husband walked me to my car. "I don't expect things to go back to how they were," he said. "They can't," I replied. "I know, but I want to build something new, if you'll let me." I looked at him, really looked. He was still the man I'd loved, still the father of my child, but he was also someone who had failed me in one of the most vulnerable moments of my life. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. He nodded. "That's fair." He reached out, hesitated, then let his hand fall back to his side. That small restraint, that respect, meant more than any apology. The day we finally did the DNA test was quiet. No arguments, no drama. Just a nurse, a cotton swab, and a truth that had never actually been in question. The results came back exactly as I'd always known they would. Our son was his. My husband cried when he read the paper, not because of relief, but because of shame. I doubted you, he said, when you needed me. I placed the paper down gently. Yes, I said, you did. And yet there was something strangely grounding about that moment, seeing reality written plainly, undeniable after so much distortion. We didn't announce the truth to everyone. We didn't need to. Some things are private. But boundaries were drawn. His mother wasn't allowed unsupervised visits. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She sent another letter. I opened it this time. It was long, apologetic, self-justifying, afraid. I folded it carefully and placed it back in the envelope. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't a decision. It's a process, and sometimes distance is part of mercy for everyone involved. One night, after the baby had fallen asleep, my husband and I sat on opposite ends of the couch. I don't want him to grow up learning lies or love, he said softly. Neither do I replied. He looked at me. Thank you, he said, for fighting for the truth. I met his gaze. I wasn't fighting for the truth. I was protecting my child and myself. He nodded. That was the beginning of something new. Not a fairy tale, but something honest.
Life didn't magically soften after that. Healing never announces itself the way pain does. It arrives quietly, almost shyly, in small moments you don't recognize as important until later. Like the first morning my husband came over just to help, not to talk, not to explain himself, not to ask anything of me. He showed up with groceries and cooked breakfast while I fed the baby. He washed the dishes without being asked. He didn't hover. He didn't expect praise. When he left, he said, "Thank you for letting me be here," instead of, "I'll see you later." That difference mattered. We stayed married, but we did not rush back into being a couple. We lived in that strange in-between space where you are bound by history and responsibility, but still learning how or if you can trust each other again. Some days were almost normal. Other days, something small would cut deep. A comment about family, a memory of the weeks after the birth, the echo of his words, "That baby isn't mine," would come back without warning, sharp and breath-stealing. He learned not to defend himself when that happened. "I know," he would say quietly. "I remember." And that was better than excuses. His mother tried again, eventually. She asked to see the baby, asked to talk, asked to explain herself properly. My husband came to me before responding. "I won't do anything without your consent," he said. "He's our child." I appreciated that more than he knew. I thought about it for days, about the damage that had already been done, about the kind of woman I wanted to be, not just as a wife, but as a mother. In the end, I agreed to one meeting in a public place, brief, clear boundaries. She arrived early, sitting stiffly at a cafe table, hands wrapped around a cup she wasn't drinking from. She looked older than I remembered, smaller. When she saw the baby, her face crumpled. "I never meant for this," she said immediately. I didn't sit down. "I know," I replied, "but intentions don't erase consequences." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I was afraid," she said again, like it was a spell that might absolve her. "I was too," I said, "and I was the one you sacrificed." She looked up at me, startled by the calm in my voice. "I won't keep him from you forever," I continued, "but things will never be the same, and they shouldn't be." She reached toward the baby, then stopped herself. "I understand," she whispered, and for the first time I believed she did, not because she'd changed, but because she'd finally lost control. We left shortly after. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. That was enough. My husband and I continued therapy. The session shifted from crisis to rebuilding, from what went wrong to what kind of family do we want to be. One afternoon, the therapist asked him, "What did you learn about loyalty?" He didn't answer right away.
That loyalty without truth is just obedience, and I confuse the two, he said finally. I felt something unclench inside me when he said that. He turned to me, and I learned, he added, that love isn't proven by suspicion, it's proven by trust, especially when fear is loud. That was the closest thing to redemption he could offer me. I didn't forgive him all at once. Forgiveness came in pieces. The first night I slept without replaying the accusation in my head. The first time I left him alone with the baby and didn't feel a knot of resentment twist in my chest. The first time I laughed, really laughed, and realized it wasn't forced. Those moments didn't erase what happened, but they built something new alongside it. As for me, I changed too. I stopped trying to be the agreeable one, the quiet one, the woman who smoothed things over to keep the peace. I learned how dangerous silence can be, especially when other people are writing your story for you. I spoke up more, drew lines more clearly, said no without explaining myself. Motherhood didn't make me softer, it made me braver. One night, as I rocked my son to sleep, I studied his face, so calm, so unaware of the storm he'd been born into. "I will never let anyone doubt you," I whispered to him. "Not who you are, not where you belong." I meant it with my whole body. Months later, we moved back in together, not because we were fixed, but because we were honest enough to try. We set rules about family interference, about communication, about what happens when doubt creeps in again, because it always does in some form. We promised not to let fear speak louder than facts, and this time we both meant it. Sometimes people ask me how I stayed calm through it all. The truth is, I wasn't calm. I was scared. I was hurt. I was furious in ways I didn't know how to express at the time. But I had just given birth, my body had carried life, and something about that anchored me. When the world tried to tell me I was untrustworthy, I knew what I'd endured, what I'd survived, what I'd brought into this world. No lie could take that from me. The last time my husband's mother saw the baby that year, she held him carefully, like something fragile. She didn't make grand speeches, she didn't offer advice, she simply said, "I'm sorry I let my fear hurt all of you." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was truth. And sometimes, truth is the most healing thing anyone can give. Now, when I look back on those weeks after my son was born, I no longer feel that same raw ache. I feel clarity. I see how quickly women are doubted, especially when we are tired, vulnerable, and new to motherhood. I see how easily family loyalty can become a weapon, and I see how dangerous it is when people protect their secrets by destroying someone else's integrity. But I also see my own strength. I didn't scream. I didn't collapse. I didn't let someone else's lie define me. I stood still long enough for the truth to reveal itself. If you're listening to this and you've ever been accused of something you didn't do, especially by the people who were supposed to protect you, I want you to hear this clearly. Your truth does not need permission to exist, and you do not have to destroy yourself to prove it. Sometimes the truth doesn't shout, it waits, and when it comes out, it doesn't just expose lies, it shows you exactly who you are. Would you have stayed as calm as I did? Would you have walked away or fought for the truth the way I did? Tell me in the comments, and if this story touched something in you, consider subscribing. You're not alone here.